The galaxy stretched out far and wide, filled with alien civilizations that had risen to great heights. Among them, the Empire stood at the top. They were powerful, ruthless, and feared by everyone. Their fleets were vast, their armies unbeatable, and their rule seemed unchallenged. They had conquered countless planets, each one falling into line under their control. The Empire's presence was felt everywhere. To the Empire, humanity was nothing more than a primitive species, confined to a tiny planet in the far reaches of the galaxy. Earth was seen as nothing but a small, insignificant rock orbiting a yellow star, and the humans who lived there were considered weak and unworthy of attention. For centuries, Earth had been left alone, ignored by the greater powers of the universe. After all, humans were still fighting wars with primitive weapons and struggling to advance their technology. The idea that humanity could ever challenge the Empire was laughable. When the Empire first learned of the humans, their reaction was one of pure mockery. "They are no more than ants," they scoffed, "crawling around on a planet far from the rest of us. They don't even know how to travel beyond their own world. How could they ever pose a threat to us?" Their commanders would laugh among themselves, sharing stories of how their fleets had crushed other civilizations. There was no fear, no sense of urgency. After all, the Empire had never encountered anything that could stand against them. They viewed the humans with contempt, barely even considering them a species worth investigating. But as the Empire grew complacent in its power, something changed on Earth, something no one in the Empire could have foreseen. For years, Earth had been progressing slowly, its people making small steps forward in technology. They had reached the stars, sending out their first ships to explore the solar system. But the human race still faced challenges. They fought wars, faced pandemics, and struggled to unite in the face of a rapidly changing world. Despite all their flaws, one thing was clear: humanity was resilient. Every time they faced defeat, they found a way to rise again. But it was in the shadows of these struggles that something incredible was happening. Behind the closed doors of government labs and top-secret military installations, a new project was being developed. Scientists, engineers, and military leaders were working together to create something unimaginable: a fleet of ships capable of teleporting across vast distances of space in an instant. It was the kind of technology that could change everything. The Empire, however, remained blissfully unaware of this. They continued to mock humanity, believing that they were too weak to ever challenge the Empire's rule. Their spies reported that Earth was still a chaotic world, its governments in disarray, its people divided. They couldn't fathom that humanity was on the verge of something revolutionary. Every time the Empire thought about humanity, they remembered their primitive rockets and outdated weapons. "How can they even hope to survive against us?" they would say. "Their greatest military is a joke. Their ships can barely travel past their own moon. It will take them centuries to reach the stars, if they even can." But the humans were ready. They had developed technology far beyond what the Empire could imagine. And soon, the Empire would have to face the truth. They had underestimated humanity in the worst way possible. As the Empire's massive fleets prepared to expand their territory once again, their commanders received word of the small planet on the edge of the galaxy. Earth. Some of the officers laughed when they saw the data. "That place. They're still fighting with sticks and stones. Let them be." The fleet continued its march, moving closer and closer to Earth. There was no reason to worry, no reason to fear. To the Empire, this was just another easy conquest. Another planet to add to their growing list of controlled worlds. They were certain that humanity would fall to their might, just as every other civilization had before them. But what they didn't know, what they could never have imagined, was that humanity had been quietly watching them for years. The humans had been preparing in secret, and they had one weapon that the Empire could never have predicted. The Empire's greatest strength was its belief in its own superiority. They thought no one could ever challenge them, and that overconfidence was about to be their biggest mistake. The Empire's commanders gathered in their war rooms, discussing the strategies for the conquest of Earth. They laughed, mocking the primitive species that would soon be under their rule. "We will show them how weak they really are," they said. Little did they know, the true strength of humanity was about to be unleashed. The humans had something the Empire didn't expect: unity, resilience, and the will to fight for their home. As the Empire's ships moved closer, a small fleet of human warships prepared for the first time in history to defend Earth. The teleportation technology was ready, but humanity's greatest weapon was not just their technology, it was their spirit. And the Empire would soon discover just how dangerous underestimating humans could be. The Empire's fleet advanced steadily toward Earth, its immense ships cutting through the void of space. Massive warships, their hulls glinting like giant silver behemoths, moved with deadly precision. Each ship was a symbol of the Empire's might, a reminder to the galaxy that no one dared oppose them. Their mission: to conquer Earth, just as they had done with countless planets before. On Earth, however, the mood was different. While the rest of the galaxy continued to view humanity as insignificant, the leaders of Earth knew the truth. For years, they had been working in the shadows, developing technologies that would level the playing field against the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known. Humanity's scientists had created a technology that seemed like science fiction just a decade ago: teleportation. The ability to send entire fleets of ships across vast distances in the blink of an eye was a dream made real. But this technology was not just about speed. It was about strategy. It was about surprise. It was about making the Empire realize, too late, that they had underestimated humanity in the worst possible way. The fleet of teleporting warships had been designed not just to defend Earth, but to strike at the heart of the Empire's arrogance. This was humanity's ultimate weapon, the very thing that would turn the tide of the war and show the Empire that the humans they had mocked were not as weak as they thought. But before that could happen, the humans had to face their greatest challenge: time. The Empire's fleet was getting closer, and their arrival would be imminent. The humans needed to act fast, and they needed to be ready. In the depths of Earth's command center, the leaders gathered around a massive holographic map, displaying the progress of the Empire's fleet. The tension was palpable, and the air was thick with anticipation. Every person in the room knew that the next few hours would define the future of their species. "We don't have much time," General Stevens said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "Once the Empire's fleet enters the system, they'll be here within hours. We need to be ready." The general was one of the few humans who knew about the teleportation fleet. He had seen the technology firsthand, and he understood the power it held. He also understood the risk. If they didn't act quickly, humanity's only hope could be lost. In another part of the command center, engineers worked feverishly to ensure the teleportation technology was ready for deployment. They had spent years perfecting it, but there was still one final test to pass. The technology was untested in battle. Could it withstand the pressures of real combat? Could it teleport entire fleets without fail? Captain Clara Morgan, the head of the teleportation project, stood near the console, her hands moving swiftly over the controls. "It's working," she muttered, barely believing it herself. "We're ready to deploy." Her mind raced with thoughts of what was at stake. If they succeeded, Earth would be saved. But if they failed, the Empire would crush them, just as they had done to countless others. Far away, on the bridge of the Empire's flagship, Admiral Callan watched the progression of the fleet. His mind was sharp, his experience vast. He had conquered dozens of worlds, each one falling to the Empire's will. He didn't believe for a second that Earth would be any different. "The humans have no chance," Admiral Callan said with a sneer. "Their technology is nothing compared to ours. We'll destroy them in days." The officers around him nodded in agreement, their faces cold and confident. They had no fear. After all, why would they? The Empire had never known defeat. But as they moved closer to Earth, something strange began to happen. Their sensors, designed to detect any sign of danger, began to flicker. The readings were unusual. A fleet of ships, smaller than the Empire's, appeared on the radar, seemingly out of nowhere. They were moving in a pattern that no one had ever seen before. "This doesn't make sense," the lead technician said, his voice shaky. "There's no way those ships should be here. They just appeared." Admiral Callan frowned. "What do you mean, appeared?" The technician hesitated, unsure if he believed what he was seeing. "They just teleported. Right in front of us. No warning. No trace." Callan's eyes narrowed. This wasn't possible. No species, not even the most advanced, could achieve such a feat. But as the technician continued to run diagnostics, the truth became undeniable. There was a fleet of ships on the move, and they were human. Back on Earth, the teleportation fleet was now fully deployed. Humanity's ultimate weapon had arrived, ready to face the Empire's arrogance head-on. The humans had done it. They had proven that they were capable of far more than anyone could have imagined. And now, it was time for the Empire to learn the truth. Humanity was not weak, and they were not to be underestimated. As the two fleets faced off in the vast emptiness of space, both sides knew that the upcoming battle would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Empire's fleet had laughed at humanity, but now it was their turn to face the consequences of their mockery. The stage was set. The Empire would soon learn that the true strength of humanity lay not in their weapons, but in their resolve to protect their home, their future, and their very existence. The battle for Earth had only just begun. As the human fleet materialized out of thin air, the Empire's officers stared in disbelief. The ships weren't supposed to be there. Yet there they were, hovering in perfect formation, a fleet of human warships, all equipped with the power of advanced teleportation technology. "Prepare for combat," Admiral Callan shouted, his voice filled with urgency. The Empire's fleet immediately shifted into battle formation, their massive guns rotating into position, ready to unleash their devastating firepower. The human ships, smaller and less advanced in their traditional technology, were no match for the Empire's might, or so the Empire thought. On the other side of the battlefield, Captain Clara Morgan stood aboard the bridge of her flagship, the Vanguard. She had spent years working on the teleportation project, and now it was finally time for her to prove that humanity could stand tall in the face of a galaxy that had once seen them as weak. "Captain, the Empire is opening fire," her communications officer reported, his voice tense. "Let them," Clara said, her expression unwavering. "We're not here to win through firepower alone. We're here to show them the power of strategy, of unity, and of human resilience. Hold your positions and prepare for Phase 1. With a sharp motion, she signaled her crew to initiate the first phase of the human plan. The teleportation fleet began to shift and maneuver, vanishing from one spot and reappearing in another. The Empire's ships fired at empty space, their shots missing by miles. With each new teleportation jump, the humans seemed to mock the Empire's attempts at targeting them. The Empire's fleet roared in frustration. "They're too fast," one of the officers screamed as he desperately tried to lock onto the rapidly changing targets. "What is this?" Admiral Callan demanded. He had seen advanced technologies before, but nothing like this. The human ships didn't move like anything he had encountered. Every time they blinked into existence in a new location, they had a different angle of attack. The human fleet didn't return fire yet. They weren't trying to win with sheer firepower. Instead, they used their teleportation advantage to create chaos, disorienting the Empire's fleet and breaking the disciplined formations that had worked so well in every previous battle. From his command chair, Callan watched as one of his flagship's lasers missed by miles. His officers looked around in panic. This wasn't just an ordinary tactic. It was the beginning of something much bigger, and it was shaking the Empire to its core. "How are they doing this?" Callan muttered. He slammed his fist on the armrest. "They're human. They're supposed to be weak. What is this trick? Clara watched as the Empire's ships stumbled, unable to keep up with her fleet's unpredictable movements. She couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Humanity had been underestimated for far too long, and now it was time to show the galaxy just how dangerous they could be. Phase 2, Clara ordered. The next step was already in motion. Suddenly, a new set of human ships materialized. These ones were larger, and they were armed with long-range weapons. Unlike the smaller ships, these vessels were designed for direct confrontation. They were positioned around the Empire's flagship, cutting off any escape routes and surrounding the larger fleet in a near-impossible-to-escape trap. The Empire's crew was stunned. They hadn't anticipated this move. The large human ships opened fire in unison, unleashing a barrage of energy weapons, hitting several of the smaller Empire warships. "Return fire, all weapons," Kalin shouted. The Empire's fleet retaliated with all they had, but it was clear that the humans had the upper hand. Their ability to teleport in and out of combat zones made them almost impossible to target effectively. Despite their firepower, the Empire's ships were being chipped away one by one. The human fleet was proving that strength wasn't just in raw power. It was in adaptability, in technology, and in the ability to surprise. "We need reinforcements." Kalin barked as his bridge shook from another direct hit. His ships were faltering. They were still far superior in number and size, but the unpredictability of the human fleet was something he had never prepared for. On Earth, humanity's allies watched from afar. The battle was being broadcasted across the planet's communication networks. People everywhere had gathered to watch the event unfold, many of them staring in disbelief. The human race, once seen as weak and defenseless, was holding its ground against one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Back on the Vanguard, Clara Morgan was focused, her eyes locked onto the display screens. She didn't allow herself to get distracted by the adrenaline rushing through her veins. This was only the beginning. Hold steady, everyone. Keep teleporting. Keep them off balance. We won't let up. The Empire won't know what hit them, Clara commanded. She knew that they couldn't rely on their technology alone. They needed to continue using their knowledge, their creativity, and their willpower. Humanity had always been resourceful, and it was time for that resourcefulness to shine through. As the battle raged on, one thing became clear to everyone watching. This fight was far from over. The Empire had thought they could crush humanity easily. But as they watched the human fleet appear, disappear, and reappear again, they began to realize the terrifying truth. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were winning. And this war was only just beginning. The battle raged on, and the Empire's situation grew increasingly dire. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't predict the movements of the human fleet. Ships were disappearing in the blink of an eye, only to reappear in new positions, launching devastating attacks from unexpected angles. The Empire's once pristine formations were in tatters, and their precision fire had become increasingly ineffective. Admiral Kalin paced back and forth in his command center. Sweat beaded on his brow as the situation continued to spiral out of control. The humans, those weak, primitive beings, were overwhelming them. His fleet, equipped with the most advanced technology in the galaxy, was now on the defensive. How could this happen? How could humanity, who had always been beneath the notice of the Empire, turn the tide of battle so decisively? The Empire had spent centuries establishing its dominance. It had conquered hundreds of worlds, each more advanced than the last. But Earth had been a footnote in their history, a planet full of insignificant life forms who had barely even left their solar system. How could they be a threat now? "Admiral," one of his officers called out, breaking Kalin's train of thought. The officer's voice trembled with fear. "Our fleet's communications are being jammed. We're losing contact with several of our ships." Kalin's heart sank, jamming the fleet's communications. The human ships had been outfitting their vessels with new and unexpected technologies. Every time they thought they had a grasp on the situation, the humans did something that defied logic and science. Their teleportation fleet was not just about movement, it was about complete unpredictability. Damn them! Kalen snarled, slamming his fist onto the table. They can't keep doing this. We need to break their will. As if in response to his anger, the lights in the command center flickered. A sudden, sharp alarm blared. The view screens displayed a series of red lights, signaling incoming fire, but there was no ship to target. The humans had disappeared again, using their teleportation technology to avoid the attack completely. "It's happening again, Admiral," the communications officer said. "They're everywhere and nowhere. It's like they're mocking us." Kalen's mind raced. How could they stop this? How could they defeat an enemy that didn't play by the rules? For years, the Empire had crushed civilizations beneath its boot. Now, they were the ones being crushed. Humanity was rewriting the script, and the Empire was helpless to stop it. "We can't keep running," Kalen muttered to himself. He had to do something. He had to show the galaxy that the Empire was still in control. But the longer this battle went on, the more it seemed like a losing cause. Meanwhile, Clara Morgan stood confidently aboard the Vanguard, watching the chaos unfold on the screens. Her crew was working in perfect sync, shifting and teleporting with precision, never giving the Empire a chance to regroup. The human fleet was starting to move in for the kill. "Phase 3, Clara ordered, her voice calm, yet filled with the power of determination. It was time to end this. The fleet blinked out of existence once more, only to reappear on the other side of the Empire's formation. The Empire's ships were scattered, unable to predict where the human ships would show up next. Clara's fleet was relentless. They attacked relentlessly, disorienting the Empire's crews with each new move. "Admiral Kalen, we need to retreat," one of his senior officers suggested urgently. The Empire's warships had suffered severe damage, and the human fleet was showing no signs of slowing down. "We can't win this battle. We need reinforcements." Kalen clenched his fists. He hated the thought of retreating, especially after so many centuries of dominance. But the humans were too unpredictable. They had the initiative now, and there was nothing the Empire could do to regain control. The thought of surrender was intolerable to him. "I won't retreat," Kalen roared. "Not while I still have ships left to fight. Tell the fleet to regroup. We'll push them back, no matter the cost." But even as he shouted those words, he knew deep down that it was a lost cause. The Empire had underestimated humanity in every possible way. Now, they were paying the price. On Earth, the broadcast continued. People everywhere watched in awe as the human fleet outmaneuvered the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known. For years, humanity had been the subject of ridicule, dismissed as weak and insignificant. But now, the Empire's arrogance had come to a crashing halt. The tide of the war was turning, and humanity was on the rise. As Clara Morgan's voice rang out over the communication channels, giving orders to her fleet, a new wave of confidence swept across her crew. They were fighting not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. Humanity had been forced to fight for survival for too long, and now they were proving that they could thrive. "This is our moment," Clara whispered to herself. "This is humanity's time to shine." Back in the Empire's command center, Kalen watched as another one of his ships fell to the relentless barrage of the human fleet. The reality of their defeat was beginning to set in. "Admiral, the fleet can't hold," his officer reported, a note of despair creeping into his voice. "We need to retreat before we lose everything." Kalen's face twisted in fury, but deep inside, he knew it was true. The Empire had lost. Humanity had won. And the Empire, once the mightiest force in the galaxy, had been humbled by the very people it had once mocked. "Prepare for retreat," Kalen ordered, his voice cold and resigned. "The Empire will live to fight another day, but it will never forget the day that humanity humbled us." As the Empire began its retreat, Clara Morgan's fleet watched them go. They had delivered the first blow. And this was only the beginning of humanity's rise. The Empire's retreat was swift and brutal. Their once proud warships turned tail, disappearing into the cold expanse of space, leaving behind a trail of debris. The victory was complete, but the cost was far from insignificant. Humanity had proved itself, but they had yet to fully comprehend the repercussions of their actions. On the Vanguard, Clara Morgan sat in the command chair, her face expressionless. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Despite the crushing defeat they had just dealt to the Empire, she couldn't shake the feeling that there were bigger battles ahead. The Empire had underestimated humanity, yes, but Clara knew better than to think that this was the end of the story. "Report," she said calmly, glancing at the tactical display that showed the remnants of the Empire's fleet retreating. "All systems are reporting green, Commander," came the reply from her second-in-command, Lieutenant Harris. "The fleet is intact. We've taken minimal casualties. The Empire's forces are in full retreat, and they're not showing any signs of turning back." Clara nodded but didn't smile. Her mind raced with thoughts of what was to come. She had led the charge against the Empire, but the galaxy was a vast place, and its powers were not so easily shaken. There were other empires, other factions that would no doubt take advantage of the chaos left behind by the retreating Empire. Humanity had made a statement today, but Clara knew that would only draw more attention, both from potential allies and enemies. "Prepare a report for Earth," Clara ordered, her voice calm but firm. "We'll need to brief the Council. This victory is just the beginning. We need to be ready for what's coming." Meanwhile, back on Earth, the broadcast of the victory spread like wildfire. News outlets, social media, and government channels exploded with excitement and disbelief. The entire planet was caught up in the historic moment, watching in awe as their people had risen to challenge the galaxy's mightiest empire. The event was being dubbed the day humanity stood tall. People everywhere could hardly believe it. Their ancestors, who had been deemed weak and insignificant, had just taken on an empire that had crushed countless civilizations. The celebration on Earth was mixed with an undercurrent of apprehension. While the victory was sweet, the fear of retribution from the Empire was very real. The Empire was not a force known to tolerate defeat. The human race had made its stand, but would it be enough to keep the enemy at bay? In the heart of the Earth's government complex, the Council convened in an emergency meeting. Leaders from every nation, every continent, had gathered to discuss the next steps. The mood was a strange mix of pride and concern. Humanity had won, but what would the Empire do in response? "Do we dare to hope?" Councillor Lin asked, her voice echoing in the chamber. She was the first to break the silence. "Is this really the beginning of a new era, or have we just made ourselves a target for the Empire's wrath?" "Both," President Reed replied, his tone serious. "We have made a powerful statement. The Empire knows now that humanity is not to be underestimated. But we must not forget what we're up against. The Empire is not the only threat in the galaxy. Others are watching us." The Council members exchanged worried glances. For centuries, Earth had been isolated, largely untouched by the galactic powers that had waged war across the stars. Now, humanity had thrust itself into the center of the galaxy's stage, and there was no going back. On the Vanguard, Clara turned her attention back to her fleet. The teleporter technology had changed everything. They had proven that humanity could stand up to the strongest, most advanced forces in the galaxy. But it also made them a target. Every faction in the galaxy would now want to learn the secrets of their technology, and not all of them would come in peace. "Commander," Lieutenant Harris said, breaking her thoughts, "we've received a transmission from the Empire. They want to speak with you." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Patch it through." The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of a familiar figure, Admiral Kalin. His face was a mixture of anger and resignation. "You've made your point, Commander Morgan," Kalin said, his voice cold. "But don't think for a moment that this is over. The Empire will rebuild, and when it does, we will return." Clara leaned forward in her chair. "You've been humbled, Kalen. And so has your empire. Don't come back. If you do, we'll be ready." The Admiral sneered. "We will return, and we will crush you. Count on it." With that, the transmission ended, leaving Clara staring at the empty screen. She knew the Empire would come back. They wouldn't let their loss go unpunished. But now, humanity had something they had never had before: confidence. They had tasted victory, and it was a powerful motivator. "Send a message to all Allied ships," Clara ordered, standing up. "Prepare for what's to come. The Empire will return, but humanity will be ready." The fleet began to move, as Clara's mind turned to the future. There was much work to be done. They had won a battle, but the war for the galaxy was just beginning, and humanity would no longer be the ones looking up at the stars in awe. They would be the ones making the stars tremble. The Empire's retreat was but a fleeting moment of victory, and Clara Morgan knew that. As humanity celebrated its newfound position in the galaxy, darker forces were already at work. Whispers of the Empire's return spread quickly through the fleet, and from there, to every corner of the galaxy. They were not a power to be taken lightly, and their thirst for revenge was unmistakable. Clara sat alone in her quarters aboard the Vanguard, her eyes glued to the holographic display that filled the room. The map of the galaxy flickered, showing countless stars, each representing a potential danger or opportunity. The Empire's fleet was regrouping, and new alliances were forming. Yet beyond these immediate concerns, Clara was troubled by something more profound. As the Empire prepared for their inevitable return, humanity had to deal with a new, more pressing issue: the uncertainty of what lay beyond the Empire. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy's landscape was shifting in ways humanity could not yet understand. The Empire's defeat, while monumental, had stirred a hornet's nest, and the resulting chaos might have more far-reaching consequences than they had expected. She rubbed her temples, trying to push the thoughts away. The pressure of command was starting to weigh heavily on her, but she couldn't afford to falter. The Council had put their trust in her and her crew, and she had delivered. But now, humanity needed more than a hero. They needed leadership. She turned away from the display and began walking to the command bridge, where her crew was waiting. On the bridge, Lieutenant Harris was already at his station, eyes scanning reports. As Clara approached, he stood up, offering her a quick salute before returning to his work. "Commander, we've received a series of encrypted transmissions from the Empire," Harris reported, his voice tight with urgency. "They are gathering their forces. This time, it's not just a counterattack. They're mobilizing for something much bigger." Clara's gaze darkened. "How soon before they're ready?" "Estimates vary, but it could be as soon as 2 weeks," Harris replied. "They've activated their most advanced warships and are deploying additional reinforcements from their other sectors." "Then we have no time to waste," Clara said firmly. "We need to strike first. We can't afford to wait for them to come to us." But as she prepared to make her next move, Clara couldn't help but feel the weight of the unknown pressing against her. The Empire was not the only power she had to worry about. As humanity's reach grew, so did its enemies. More species, more factions, and more unknown dangers. The threat from the Empire was bad enough, but the reality was that the galaxy had no shortage of predators just waiting for humanity to make a mistake. "We've been fighting against the Empire," Clara muttered to herself. "But the real challenge is what comes after." Harris looked up from his console, sensing the shift in Clara's mood. "You think they're just the beginning, don't you?" Clara nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing. "Yes, and we need to prepare for that." Just then, a blaring alarm interrupted their conversation, causing the entire crew to spring into action. Clara's heart raced as she turned to Harris, who was already analyzing the incoming data. "Multiple unidentified ships detected, Commander. They're approaching at high speed," Harris reported. "They're not broadcasting any known signals." Clara's mind went into overdrive. Could it be the Empire already? "No, Commander. "These ships don't match any known Empire signatures," Harris replied. "They're different." Clara's brow furrowed as she turned to the rest of the crew. "Battle stations. Prepare for contact. We're about to learn who else is interested in humanity's newfound power." The tension in the air was palpable. The crew moved with the precision of those who had fought side by side in the battles that had led them to this point. Every step, every action, was taken with the knowledge that what was coming could change everything. The Empire was the known threat, but this was something entirely new. Moments later, the tactical screen on the bridge came to life with a burst of activity. The unknown ships were closing in fast. The fleet stood ready, each ship primed for whatever would come next. Clara clenched her fists, staring at the unknown vessels. The galaxy was full of surprises, and the worst of them were often the ones you couldn't anticipate. "Open a channel to them," Clara ordered, her voice steady. "Let's find out who they are." A harsh, static-laden transmission crackled through the comms. The words were in a language no one on the bridge recognized, but the urgency was clear. The unknown ships were demanding something. Clara's mind raced. She had no idea who they were, but she knew one thing for sure. They were here for a reason. "Do we respond?" Harris asked, his voice tight. "We have no choice," Clara replied. "We respond, but we make no promises. We need to show them humanity won't back down." As the transmission continued, Clara's heart pounded. This was a turning point. The Empire's retreat had been the first test, but humanity was now facing a different kind of enemy, one that wouldn't hesitate to wipe them out if given the chance. But one thing was certain: humanity had survived so far because it had adapted, fought, and shown resilience when all seemed lost. This was no different. The galaxy was vast and filled with dangers, but humanity would make its mark. No matter who came next, humanity was ready for the next challenge. And this time, Clara wasn't just leading a fleet. She was leading the future of an entire species. The stakes were higher than ever before. The real fight had only just begun. The unknown ships had closed in rapidly, their dark forms looming in the distance. Clara watched intently from the bridge of the Vanguard, her eyes scanning the tactical readouts. The crew moved quickly to position their ships for defense, but uncertainty hung thick in the air. They had no idea who these newcomers were, nor what they wanted. "Commander, their ships are slowing down," Harris said, his voice sharp with surprise. "It seems like they're preparing to enter communication range." Clara nodded, her expression focused. "Keep your stations alert, everyone. No one knows what's coming." Suddenly, the ship's comm system crackled to life with a strange, yet hauntingly familiar voice. "This is Commander Tulor of the Zarathian Empire," the voice said in perfect English, sending a shiver down Clara's spine. "We are here to negotiate your surrender." The words echoed in the silence of the bridge. Clara's mind raced, trying to process the information. The Zarathian Empire. She had heard rumors of a mysterious race from the far reaches of the galaxy, but no one had ever confirmed their existence, until now. "You're making a mistake if you think we'll surrender," Clara replied, her voice calm but laced with underlying defiance. "Humanity isn't known for rolling over. You've picked the wrong species to mess with." There was a brief silence on the other end of the comms. Then the voice of Commander Tulor responded, tinged with annoyance. "You are in no position to make demands, human. Your species has shown a remarkable resilience, but it will be your undoing. We've been watching you from the shadows, waiting for this moment. The galaxy was never meant to be ruled by your kind." Clara clenched her fists, trying to keep her temper in check. The nerve of this alien commander, but she couldn't let her anger cloud her judgment. There was a lot at stake, and she knew the crew of the Vanguard was depending on her to stay level-headed. "We don't want war," Clara said, trying a different approach. "But if you want to fight, then we'll be ready. Humanity doesn't run from a fight. You'll find that out soon enough." For a moment, there was only silence, And then Commander Tulor spoke again, his tone dark and menacing. "You misunderstand, human. This is not a fight you can win. You've made a grave mistake in challenging the Xerathean Empire, and you will soon see the consequences." Before Clara could respond, the transmission abruptly cut off. The bridge fell silent as everyone exchanged worried glances. Harris turned to Clara, his face tight with concern. "What now, Commander?" he asked. Clara stood still for a moment, her mind whirling with the implications of what had just happened. The Xerathians were unlike any species they had encountered before. There was a cold certainty in their words that sent a chill through her spine. "We prepare," Clara said, her voice steady. "We're going to need every advantage we can get, and we're going to need it fast. The Xerathians won't give us a chance to breathe. It's time to show them why humanity is not to be underestimated." The crew immediately went to work, coordinating with the other ships in the fleet, preparing weapons systems, and ensuring every possible resource was allocated. They were in a race against time. The Xerathians weren't just threats. They were strategists, experienced in warfare and conquest. The moment they decided to strike, humanity would be in for the fight of its life. As the fleet readied itself, Clara couldn't help but wonder, what would the Xerathians do next? And more importantly, were they truly as powerful as they seemed? Their confidence was unsettling, but Clara had something they didn't, an unyielding will to fight. The Xerathians could have all the power they wanted, but humanity had something far more dangerous, the ability to adapt and fight when cornered. She turned back to the view screen, watching as the dark shadows of the Xerathian fleet loomed on the horizon. The Empire had made its move, but Clara knew humanity would not back down. Whatever happened next, they would show the galaxy that they had learned from their past, and they would survive. Suddenly, a warning signal blared through the ship, pulling Clara out of her thoughts. "Commander, incoming fire," shouted Harris, his voice frantic. "They've initiated an attack." Clara's eyes widened as she saw the flashing red lights on the tactical display. The Xerathian ships had opened fire, and their weapons were more advanced than anything humanity had faced before. The first shots hit the outer hull of the Vanguard, causing a violent shudder through the ship. "All hands to battle stations," Clara shouted, her voice commanding. "Return fire. We can't let them get the upper hand." The crew rushed into action, their faces a mix of determination and fear. They had trained for moments like this, but nothing could truly prepare them for the intensity of combat. The Xerathians were relentless, and their assault was far more than a simple skirmish. It was an invasion. Clara gritted her teeth, her heart racing. "We're not backing down. Humanity doesn't surrender. Not today. Not ever." As the battle raged on, the crew fought with everything they had. The stakes had never been higher, and the odds had never seemed worse. But Clara knew one thing for certain. Humanity's spirit would not be extinguished so easily. The fight for their survival was only just beginning, and Clara Morgan would lead them to victory, no matter the cost.